picture your physical filing cabinet for a second. You buy a manila folder, you write taxes on the tab, you drop your forms inside, and you just shut the drawer.
Right, you're done.
Exactly, you're done. It's physically contained, it makes logical sense, and you never really have to think about the architecture of the cabinet itself. But when you sit down at your computer today, that filing cabinet has essentially just been blown to pieces.
Oh, completely scattered.
Right. We are looking at a digital landscape that is completely fractured. And you, listening to this right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got project notes in one app, client data in another, tasks floating in some forgotten sidebar.
Yeah, and simply managing the tools to keep your life afloat feels like a full-time unpaid job.
It really does.
It creates this tremendous amount of friction before you even start doing your actual work. You spend the first 20 minutes of your day just hunting down the context you need to even begin.
Which is exactly why we are doing this today. We've taken the stack of sources you shared with us, the software documentation, the expert YouTube tutorials, that massive curated GitHub repository list, to really map out the current spectrum of how we organize our digital lives in 2026.
And the mission of this deep dive is to explore two absolute extremes of that spectrum.
Yeah. We're going to start at the Zen-like minimalism of a totally blank page, and then we are going to travel straight into the heart of complex AI-driven, hyper-automated databases, because it really comes down to this core question, right? Do you simplify your workspace by aggressively hiding the complexity from yourself? Or do you embrace it by building a fully automated digital command center?
That is the core architectural decision. Every knowledge worker has to make that choice right now.
Let's start at the absolute simplest end of that spectrum. I want to look at this YouTube review from the channel Savage Reviews, covering a tool called Workflowy.
Oh yeah, Workflowy.
Now, Workflowy has been around for well over a decade, but it remains a staple right now. And the core concept is almost jarring if you're used to modern software. It is essentially just one giant, infinitely zoomable bullet point list.
That's it. Just a list.
Just a list. When you first open it, there are no folders, there are no sidebars, there are no widgets. You're just staring at a completely blank white page and a single solitary bullet point.
Which honestly can trigger a bit of blank canvas paralysis at first.
Oh, for sure.
But the underlying philosophy is about severely restricting your cognitive load.
Right, and the Savage Reviews video breaks this down with a really practical example, planning a vacation. So you make a top-level bullet point and call it Europe trip.
Okay.
You nest a bullet under that called Paris. Then you nest a bullet under Paris called restaurants. But here is the actual magic trick of the software. It's the zoom feature.
The zoom is everything in Workflowy.
Right. You click on that Paris bullet, and instantaneously the rest of the document just vanishes. You get total tunnel vision. You are only looking at the Paris details.
And that is a highly intentional design choice. By artificially collapsing the broader context, the software is basically manipulating your focus.
Right.
You don't need to worry about the logistics of your train ride to Rome while you're trying to pick a dinner spot in Paris, even though, technically speaking, both of those items exist in the exact same endless text document.
It's essentially a digital set of Russian nesting dolls. You only ever have to look at the exact doll you're currently holding in your hand. The rest are hidden inside or outside.
That's a great way to put it.
And they've been iterating on this recently, too. The late 2025 and early 2026 updates brought in things like cross-tab, drag and drop, native numbered lists, and the ability to email notes directly into the app.
So you don't even have to open it to capture a thought.
Exactly. But there is a distinct financial catch here. The free version hard caps you at 250 bullets a month.
Wow.
Yeah, if you are a heavy user, you will burn through 250 bullets in 2 days. To get unlimited bullets, you're paying $4.99 a month or $49 a year.
Which is, a bold price point to ask users to pay for what looks, on the surface at least, like a stripped-down text editor.
And that leads to my primary pushback on this entire philosophy. This tool completely lacks basic modern productivity features. There are no integrated calendars, there are no due date reminders that top up on your phone.
Right.
You can't natively embed rich media or heavy data tables. So, does this strict minimalism actually force us to think better, or is it just a massive hindrance because it refuses to play nice with the rest of our digital lives?
Well, it forces a specific kind of thinking. Workflowy completely abandons the concept of rigid, predefined folders. Instead, it forces you to think purely in terms of relationships.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like, how does the thought I am typing right now connect to the thought directly above it? For outlining a book or brainstorming a project, that is incredibly powerful. However, if If your daily workflow heavily relies on rich media, like if you need to see reference images, PDFs, and live data integration side by side with your notes hitting those minimalist limitations, is going to feel like hitting a brick wall. It cures your overwhelm by hiding information.
But there is a fatal flaw in hiding information, right? What happens when your specific role actually demands that you see all the moving parts at once?
Exactly.
If you're managing a team or tracking a dozen simultaneous projects, tunnel vision isn't peaceful, it's a liability. Which means we have to abandon the single bullet point and move to the exact opposite philosophy.
We move to the dashboard architecture. And in the sources provided, that heavily points to Notion's ecosystem.
Yeah. If workflow is about intentional blindness, Notion is about omnipotence. It's the all-in-one approach. We dug into tutorials from YouTube creators like Alex Cunningham and Titan, alongside Notion's official developer documentation, to see how power users are building these massive master dashboards.
Because the underlying architecture here completely shifts. You aren't building a list anymore. You're building a relational database that happens to be masquerading as a document.
Titan shows off this brilliant, slightly sneaky trick to visualize this. If you want to understand the sheer scale of what you've built over the years, you create a completely blank database page.
Just totally empty.
Just empty. And when the software prompts you to select a data source, it instantly generates a list of every single database hiding anywhere in your entire workspace. It shows you the raw, interconnected skeleton of your digital life.
It's basically pulling back the curtain.
Right. And then Alex Cunningham takes that skeleton and shows you how to dress it. He uses the /database command, literally just typing /database to pull all those scattered existing databases into one unified view on a single page.
But he isn't just dumping raw spreadsheets onto a page. Alex demonstrates the power of custom filtered views. He takes a massive, overwhelming raw list of company tasks and filters it down into a clean visual Kanban board that only displays work that is actively in progress.
Which is huge for focus.
Right, and crucially, he actively deletes the default unfiltered views, so the user is never tempted to look at the messy raw data.
And it goes way beyond text and tables. According to the Notion documentation, these dashboards are natively integrating the rest of the internet. They use a back-end service called iFramely, which natively embeds live functional content from over 1,900 different domains.
Over 1,900.
Yeah, you can have a YouTube research video, an interactive Google map, a live Zoom link, and a scrolling Slack channel entirely embedded and functioning right next to your project tasks. And I have to stop here, because putting multiple linked databases, interactive maps, and Slack integrations all on a single screen, to me that sounds like staring at the air traffic control tower at JFK Airport.
It's a lot.
It doesn't look like a document, it looks like a radar screen. Doesn't this create the exact same information overload that our listener is trying to escape?
It absolutely can if the user lacks discipline in how they build it. But the psychological mechanism at play here isn't about throwing data at you. It's about contextual consolidation.
Okay, break that down.
Think about the concept of context switching. Every time you leave your document to open a new browser tab for Slack or dig through Google Drive for a PDF, your brain burns energy reorienting itself. Notion's dashboard philosophy is designed to eliminate context switching.
Ah, I see.
It brings the external tools directly to the data. It puts the communication, the reference material, and the actual execution in the exact same room.
Okay, that makes sense. You're building a centralized hub to protect your attention span. But here's the problem with a perfect dashboard. Staring at an air traffic control radar doesn't actually land the planes.
Right, the data just sits there.
Just looking at your consolidated data doesn't complete the tasks. If you want the database to actually do the work for you, you have to cut the manual tethers. You have to step into the automation engine.
This is the exact moment where a static repository of information transforms into an active piece of software.
We looked at a really eye-opening YouTube video from Dimitri Panici about native webhooks, an article from William Nutt at Notion VIP about Zapier integrations, and API documentation from an approval software called Approve It. Let's start with Dimitri's video because it highlights a massive shift.
The shift to webhooks.
Right. For years, if you wanted two apps to talk to each other, you relied on standard API polling. That is essentially like knocking on a door every 15 minutes and asking, hey, did any new mail arrive?
Which is terribly inefficient.
Exactly. But Notion introduced native webhooks tied directly to clickable buttons inside the workspace. A webhook isn't knocking on the door. A webhook is a doorbell. The exact millisecond the button is pressed, the system actively fires off a signal with the payload of data.
Which fundamentally alters how you interact with your notes.
Yeah.
You are no longer just logging information, you're physically initiating complex sequences of events.
Dimitri's specific setup is wild. He has a standard meeting note page. Inside that page, there is a button. When he clicks that button, a webhook instantly fires a JSON payload of data over to an automation platform called Make.com. In literal milliseconds, Make.com parses that meeting data, creates a calendar event exactly 5 days in the future, auto-assigns the resulting subtasks to his specific team members in a different database, and this is the crazy part. It pulls the client's billing information and automatically generates a $200 Stripe or PayPal invoice for a client he named Jake Browning.
One single click.
One single click of a button in a note-taking app just did the administrative work of 3 different people.
And Zapier obviously plays a massive role in bridging these isolated tools too. The Approve It documentation shows how you can use Zapier to automatically trigger a multi-step managerial approval workflow the second a new row is added to a Google Sheet.
Wow.
Or, bringing back to our first segment, Zapier can launch a Notion database. Every time you add a new project, it can automatically generate a new nested bullet point over in Workflowy.
So it's important to mention a technical bottleneck here. If you're on Zapier's free plan, that specific pulling the knocking on the door to check for updates only happens every 15 minutes.
So it's not instantaneous.
No. But the sources point out an even bigger flaw in this automated utopia. William Nutt's article highlights that Zapier has hard limitations. Specifically, it cannot natively update Notion relational properties.
Oh, right.
Yeah, if you have a projects database and a tasks database that need to be dynamically linked to each other, the Zapier user interface simply hits a wall. You can't do it.
Which presents a fascinating crossroads for the user.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do when the pre-built user-friendly tools fail you?
Yeah.
Well, William Nutt provides a highly technical but incredibly elegant workaround. He proves that if the user interface limits you, the underlying API provides an escape hatch.
Let me see if I have the mechanism of this straight. If the standard user interface is the menu at a restaurant, and Zapier is the waiter taking your order, William Nutt is essentially suggesting you bypass the waiter, walk directly into the restaurant's kitchen, and tell the chef exactly how to alter the recipe yourself.
That is a perfect analogy. Power users deploy a feature called Code by Zapier.
Code by Zapier, okay.
Instead of using Zapier's pre-built drag-and-drop modules, they use it as an empty sandbox to run the custom JavaScript. They generate an internal integration token directly from their Notion workspace, which basically acts as an encrypted VIP pass, and they make a direct PTCH request to the Notion API, specifically targeting the V1 Pages endpoint.
So they are writing lines of code to reach directly into the software's brain and update that relational database themselves, completely bypassing the limitations of the visual app.
Exactly. It demystifies the software. It proves the visual limitations of an app are really just suggestions if you understand how to speak the underlying language of the API.
But if we are at the point where we're bypassing the user interface to run custom JavaScript that syncs across platforms and sends out real money invoices to clients, the logical next step is that we don't even need to be the ones initiating that script. I mean, who or what is going to be pushing those buttons tomorrow?
And the engineering momentum is entirely focused on answering that exact question right now.
Yeah. We went through a massive, highly curated GitHub repository list maintained by a developer named Victor Bezdek. The scale of this list is staggering. It contains 4,718 starred software projects.
That is massive.
Right. And out of those, a massive 618 of them are dedicated strictly to AI and machine learning. Over 13% of this highly curated developer list is entirely focused on artificial intelligence.
It acts as a heat map for where the smartest engineers in the world are spending their time.
Absolutely. And the names dominating this space aren't just simple chatbots. They're projects like AutoGPT, Llama, and an absolute ocean of AI coding agents like Claude Code and Devin AI. But how does a standalone AI coding agent connect back to the project management workspaces we just built? The Notion API documentation reveals the missing link. They've introduced something called Notion MCP, which stands for Model Context Protocol.
MCP is essentially the universal translator.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Before this, if you let an AI loose inside a structured database, it would likely break the formatting or misinterpret the fields.
Oh, okay.
But the Model Context Protocol creates a standardized, secure language that allows these AI tools, whether you are using ChatGPT, Claude, or a dedicated coding environment like Cursor, to directly read and write structured content inside your workspace without corrupting the underlying architecture.
And the documentation explicitly states this is designed for agentic workflows, meaning the AI isn't just a chatbot sitting in a separate browser window waiting to answer trivia questions. It is an active agent.
Right, it's taking action.
Yes. It lives inside your database, it navigates your pages, it reads the status of your tasks, and it makes autonomous changes. And this isn't just happening for solo productivity nerds tinkering in their bedrooms either. We looked at the Alteryx Server API v3 documentation, and it shows exactly how this concept scales up to massive enterprise levels.
Because at the enterprise level, you aren't just running a single Zapier script. You're running entire ecosystems of logic.
Right. They use something called YXZ workflow packages. And just to clarify what that acronym actually means in practice, a YXZP is a compressed file that bundles an entire automated workflow, all of its dependencies, all of its macros, and its data connections into one single package.
So everything in one box.
Exactly. These massive packages are being uploaded, version controlled, and scheduled to execute autonomously across corporate servers.
But notice the intense safeguards that become necessary at that scale. The Alteryx API specifically requires administrators to assign execution modes like safe or semi-safe to these workflows.
To prevent disasters.
Right. When you have interconnected systems running autonomously, you have to establish hard boundaries to prevent a runaway automation from recursively wrecking your company's data or executing malicious code. The system literally has to be put in a sandbox.
Which really makes you step back and look at the entire journey we just took. We started this deep dive exploring workflowing. We were seeking out this extreme Zen-like minimalism. We just wanted a blank white page and a single bullet point to hide the overwhelming complexity of our digital lives from our fragile human minds.
But human ambition never stops at a single bullet point. We realized we needed more context.
Exactly. So we built these incredibly complex, hyper-connected, media-rich databases in Notion. We wired them up with native webhooks and custom Zapier API scripts so they could talk to each other. We built these massive, centralized digital brains. And why did we do all of that? So that ultimately, through translation layers like the Model Context Protocol, machines could seamlessly navigate that complexity and do the actual thinking for us. We hid the complexity from ourselves, only to meticulously build it back up so an AI agent could manage it.
It really is a complete blueprint for delegating your digital life.
You listening right now, you literally have the exact mechanics to build a digital brain that can organize, automate, and autonomously execute your daily work via AI agents. But as you go about your day, I want to leave you with a slightly different angle to consider about all this automation.
Okay.
We complain constantly about the friction of work, the busy work, the data entry, the mindless sorting of folders. But neurologically, that busy work acts as a buffer. It's cognitive downtime. If your AI agents take over 100% of the mundane, structured tasks, the only work left for you is the high-stakes, deep-thinking, complex decision-making.
That's a really intense thought.
Right. What happens to our minds when the 8-hour workday contains zero busy work to let our brains rest? Can we actually survive a work environment where every single minute demands peak cognitive performance? Or, more to the point, how long will it be until the system realizes that you are the biggest bottleneck in the universe?
That is the hidden tax of total efficiency. We might end up missing the mindless data entry.
It's wild to think about. Keep questioning the tools you use and keep exploring how they change the way you think. Until next time, remember, the digital filing cabinet might be blown to pieces, but we're mapping the pieces together.